now, which means that it's time for two things to make a comeback, and that would be COVID and BLM. Right on cue, we have this resurgence, this supposed resurgence of COVID and the new COVID variant. They're talking about masking again and everything else. And also BLM is marching in the streets again. The interesting thing, of course, is that BLM basically took a break for the entirety of Biden's tenure up until right now. I guess because racism had been solved. It's a fascinating thing. Democrat gets elected and racism is solved. There's no more racism until now. Racism is back just in time for the election. So here was BLM marching in Columbus, Ohio this weekend. Let's watch. Good. So there we go. Black Lives Matter again. Black Lives Matter. Once again, it's good that they're walking in the streets, chanting that because we weren't sure. I wasn't sure. Do Black Lives still matter? Because there aren't any. There's no. If no one is chanting it, then how are we supposed to know? And now they're chanting it again, and we could go, oh, so Black Lives Matter. Well, that's good. Now the ostensible reason for this demonstration is the police shooting of a woman named Takia Young. In Columbus, Ohio. And we're told by the BLM and the media, and this is their approved narrative, that Takia Young was executed, that she was shot dead by racist cops, merely for trying to shoplift. And that's all. So she was shoplifting. The way that they frame it, you're imagining, the way what they want you to imagine is that she was shoplifting, and so some cop just walked in and shot her dead, said, you're being executed for the crime of shoplifting, and that's all that happened. Meanwhile, Takia was 6 months pregnant. Her unborn child was also killed tragically. And the media, actually it's been interesting, the media has been using the phrase unborn child to describe Takia Young's child in the womb. So that they have also just now discovered the humanity of the unborn, at least for as long as this story is in the news. So good news for all the unborn children of the world right now, that for right now, you get to be human beings for the sake of this Takia Young story. And once it's out of the news, then, of course, unborn children will go back to being inanimate clumps of worthless matter. But for right now, they are unborn babies somehow. Now, is it true that Takia Young was killed for shoplifting? Well, no, of course, that's not true. Of course, that's nonsense. She was killed because what's the reason why she was having an interaction with the police in the first place is because she was allegedly shoplifting. So that's what started this incident. And by the way, another point about that I think is relevant is that she was allegedly shoplifting alcohol. Okay, she was 6 months pregnant, allegedly shoplifting alcohol. So that's something to keep in mind. Really, for two reasons. Because number one, we're told that the reason people go and shoplift is because they're desperate and they're hungry and they're starving and they got to feed their kids. And Takia Young is 21 years old, had two other kids as well. So this is what we would normally be told, is it she was shoplifting because she's dead. Well, except that she was shoplifting, apparently, according to the reports, alcohol. Is she going to feed that to the kids? Well, she was going to feed it to her unborn child, apparently, if she was planning on consuming it herself. So that's something to keep in mind. But she stole the alcohol, allegedly, got into her car. Cops tried to stop her from leaving because she had potentially committed a crime. And that's what cops are there for. If you're committing a crime, they're going to come up and stop you. And if you say, I don't want to be stopped, I'm just going to leave, they can't just let you leave, because then there's no point in having law enforcement at all. And if there's no point, if we don't have law enforcement, there's no point of having law in the first place. And then we can just have chaos, which of course is what many on the left want. But if you want to live in any kind of civilized, functional society, you have law. And law means law enforcement. And enforcing the law means that when the law enforcement shows up, you can't just decline to be, you can't just say, well, you know what, I'd prefer not to be arrested today, officer. Oh, well, if you don't want to be, then never mind. I was like, well, okay, well, I didn't. Oh, you don't want to be arrested. Okay, well, forget it then. Just go ahead. Go, just, what did you steal there? Oh, I got a couple bottles of whiskey. Well, enjoy. Go enjoy yourself. That's not how it works. So she tried to leave, and she was in her car at this point. She refused to get out of the car, and instead she started to drive away. And one of the problems with driving away is, well, number one, you're under arrest because you're trying to steal something, so you can't just leave. But number two, there was a cop standing in front of the car when she started to drive. And so she was driving into a police officer, and that cop then fired a single shot, and Takia Young was killed. That's what happened. Vladimir Putin called the U.S. dollar's drop in dominance objective and irreversible as Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa formally agreed to use local currencies and trade instead of the U.S. dollar. As demand for the dollar weakens, the buying power of the dollar weakens as well. That's why Birch Gold is busier than ever. Investors and savers are looking to harness the power of physical gold held in a tax-sheltered IRA, and you can too. You can protect your IRA and 401k by diversifying with gold from Birch Gold. As the U.S. dollar continues to receive pressure from foreign countries, digital currency, and central banks, arm yourself with information on how to protect your savings. Learn if gold is right for you too. Text Walsh to 989898 and they'll send you a free info kit on gold. With an A+ rating with the Better Business Bureau, thousands of happy customers, and countless 5-star reviews, I trust Birch Gold to help you diversify into gold. If a central bank digital currency becomes a reality, it'll be nice to have some gold to depend on. Again, text Walsh to 989898. Now, was the cop in the wrong in this shooting? Well, as far as I can tell, if he violated any protocols, it was that he stepped in front of the car of the suspect. Now, he stepped in front of it before it was moving. He didn't jump in front of a moving vehicle. She was parked, and there was one cop to the side trying to get her out of the car, another cop in front of the car. And she was well aware that the cop was there. She chose to drive into him. Now, I'm not an expert in police procedures. I'm pretty sure it's not proper procedure for an officer to physically step in front of the car of a suspect. Cops aren't supposed to use their own bodies as barricades, as far as I know. So that was dumb on his part, no question about it. However, the fact that he's standing there doesn't give the suspect the right to drive into him. And once she is driving into him, which she was, even if he shouldn't have been standing there, he has every right to use force to protect himself. Because now this is a lethal weapon. A car is a lethal weapon being used against him, and he responds with lethal force and was entirely justified in doing so. So Takia Young is not a victim here, except of her own poor choices. And that's the thing that, as always, is missing from this discussion. That if Black Lives Matter, and of course they do, then the people who really need to hear that message are people like Takia Young. She did not treat her own life or her unborn child's life like they had any value at all. Okay, so she's the one who needs the newsflash. It's the BLM martyrs themselves that act like Black lives don't matter. They throw their lives away for no reason. They do suicidally stupid things. Make these recklessly self-destructive decisions with no upside, with no possible chance of it working out in their favor, and yet they do it anyway, and they die in the process. Like, you're shoplifting alcohol to begin with, so you're not starving and desperate, you're stealing booze, and you're pregnant. Already that's a decision that has zero chance of making your life any better at all. But then you get stopped by the cops. Okay, well, you're caught. It's done. They got you. That's it. They got you. You're done. It's finished. And here's the thing. They're not even going to put you in prison. Nobody goes to prison anymore for a little thing like stealing. You might get a fine or something. Maybe you have to do some community service at most. So it's a relatively minor, low-stakes situation. Now, I think that shoplifting should be dealt with much more severely than it is. I don't think it should be just a slap on the wrist. I think there should be real prison time, but that's not what the situation in our society today. So you can just take your slap on the wrist and move on with your life and live to steal another day, or you can try to run away, which in the best case scenario will mean that when they do catch you, you're going to have additional charges, and now you really will do prison time, whereas before you wouldn't have. That's the best case. The moment you decide to drive away, best case is that now you're going to spend more time in prison than you would have otherwise. Worst case scenario is that you get shot. There is no scenario where you drive away and things work out better for you because of it. That scenario is not on the menu of options. It doesn't exist. And that's the case for all of the BLM martyrs. I mean, every single one. They're in a situation where the cops, they're having an interaction with the police officers because of the things that they were doing, because of crimes they were allegedly committing. And rather than just accept the fact that you're committing a crime and now the police are here and that's it, they do everything in their power to make the situation as bad as it can possibly be for them. And then we're supposed to turn around and cry tears like they're the victims. And no one ever says, hey, you know what? When the cops stop you because you're committing a crime, just don't be suicidally stupid. That's it. Value your own life enough to fight it out in court. Okay, if you really are innocent of stealing the alcohol, then fight it out in court. You decide to fight it out in the parking lot, and now you're dead. And you know, all of the people who go around chanting Black Lives Matter, none of them will say this. All of these situations are extremely avoidable. The reason why I am not currently dead right now in a parking lot in Columbus, Ohio, is because, number one, I would not steal alcohol to begin with. I'm just not going to do that. And number two, if I was suspected of a crime, I would not try to drive away, because I would recognize that is going to make all of my problems so much worse. So is it because I'm a genius or I'm some great saint? No, it's a basic self-preservation. I don't want to make my problems worse. I don't want to make a situation worse for myself. So I'm not going to. Right? That's why I'm not dead in a parking lot. That's why you're not. It's not because I'm white or you're white. It's got nothing to do with it. People who make suicidally stupid decisions oftentimes end up dead. People who don't will live longer. And that's it. And that should be the message. Just have a little bit of common sense, a little bit of personal responsibility, and value your own life. And the problem is, in these communities, that this is the thing that plagues these communities. Total lack of common sense, total lack of personal responsibility, and a total lack of valuing your own life and your own freedom. And anyone who actually cares, this is what they would be saying. If you'd like to see what else I have to say, you can access my full show by going to dailywire.com or by going to the Matt Walsh Show Twitter page. Hope to see you there. Godspeed.